Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets to bodybuilding to life philosophy and everything in between. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. This month, we're switching it up with an exclusive offer that's only for VIP LMNT partners, including Carnivore Cast listeners. You can now receive this free sample pack along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is provided in the show notes or my Instagram link in bio. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, all one word. And as I said, I'll include the link in the show notes. LMNT Electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious, and get yours today to help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show. Aaron Burke at Bodybuilding with Aaron on Instagram is a PCA pro bodybuilder and high-level coach who currently resides in Thailand. Like me, he got into bodybuilding later in life, but he's been 100% dedicated to it for the last 5 years and has made incredible progress in that time. Aaron has been coaching bodybuilders and lifestyle clients for that whole time and is incredibly knowledgeable on training, diet, and performance-enhancing drugs. Aaron is also close friends with Vigorous Steve, and they've put out excellent content together on PEDs and niche uses of other drugs. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Good to be here, mate. I am a big fan. I'll be listening to the episodes when I get a bit of time, when I actually do my cardio. Yours is one of the choice podcasts to listen to.
Wow, thank you. That means a lot. Whenever I hear that anyone actually listens to the podcast, I'm flattered.
That's really good, mate. You've got a good thing going. You're really good at interviewing people, asking the questions that are relevant to the guest and everything as well. I think one of my ones I listened to recently when I was on a holiday, just chilling in the pool, I was listening to you and Justin, and I'm a big fan of Justin and Justin's work. And he's just one of those guys I just enjoy listening to him talk, right?
Yeah.
He's just a fun guy to listen to. He's just no nonsense, straight to it, good fun bodybuilding talk.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you do it really well, man. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. So when did you start bodybuilding and why? And I find it super interesting because a lot of bodybuilders get started in like high school or, their early 20s. And, I'm 31 and I just did my first show, really just got into this on the back half of COVID. So I'd love to hear your story, what brought you into it and why'd you start bodybuilding?
Yeah, I'm a real latecomer. I started, in 2019, I was 30. Well, no, I was 28. I think it was, if I get my timelines right, something like that.
Similar.
And I was fairly athletic most of my life. I'd always played rugby for a massive portion of my life. Rugby was like my go-to thing. So I always had I really enjoyed sports. When it wasn't rugby season, it was some sort of combat sport, whether it be boxing or some martial art of some sort. It was always doing something. I even had a couple of seasons of American football as well, down in the Southwest. We had a little team there, but I've always tried to stay active in some sort of sport. Bodybuilding never even crossed my mind. I remember living with a couple of housemates, one of whom was a avid bodybuilder fan, but he was actually a Muay Thai British champion at the time.
Oh, cool.
So very athletic household, 3 guys, all just, trying to, hit the gym and eat healthy and read Flex magazines and watch UFC constantly. And I started going to the gym then. And that was when I was around about 18, 19 years old. One of the guys took me to the gym, just threw me in, showed me a few little movements and stuff. And I enjoyed the lifting side of it. But still bodybuilding, I remember reading Flex magazines and seeing pictures of like Ronnie and Jay. And I was like, what is that? That's not even worth even thinking about. That's just another level of absolute freak. Like it was impressive, and I enjoyed reading the articles, and I enjoyed reading all the old training programs that they would put in those magazines and go into the gym and try them out, because in between rugby seasons, I always tried to make sure I hit the gym a few times a week at least. I was always working some sort of manual labor job, so I kept pretty fit. And I quickly realized that training wise in the gym was just, we didn't even think about doing anything other than just train really hard and lots of it, and all, everything to failure. There was no thoughts about anything else like the science of training that we know today. It was just get in the gym with the boys, crush a bunch of weights, and go until you can't go anymore. And turns out I had a pretty damn good response, and I looked pretty good, to the point where get back into the rugby season and they're like, what are you taking? Are you taking some juice or something? And I couldn't even spell testosterone back then. I had no idea what it was. And so, yeah, it was one of those things. A couple of people I knew that they did it, and I really liked the way they looked, but I was that guy, like, I'm never going to be that dude who weighs his broccoli. Not a chance. I'm never going to be that guy. I'm never going to be so anal about food and all of this, and just keep fit, play rugby, and hit some pads every now and then. But anyway, fast forward a whole bunch of time. I had a bit of I ruptured my ACL. That put a bit of a halt to the rugby for a while. And in that time, I decided to just kind of uplift my life and completely move across the other side of the world. Packed my bag, sold everything, moved to China, started a whole new life and career over there. And in the office I was working in was another guy who was a diehard bodybuilder fan. And he's like, are you a bodybuilder? And I'm like, no, I just enjoy the gym, and I enjoy like just training and reading the magazines, and the programming side of thing always kind of sparked my interest. And he said, oh, you should try bodybuilding. He's like, you could be good. You must know who like Dorian Yates is and people like that. And I'm like, who? And he's like, what? He's like, you're an English guy and you don't know who Dorian Yates is? And I'm like, I have never heard that name in my entire life. Anyway, about 3 hours of YouTube rabbit hole later, I was like, holy shit, this Dorian Yates guy is serious business. And
yeah,
and I watched Blood and Guts. And that was what really changed it for me, because before that, I thought, this is a bunch of oiled up dudes that are just injecting themselves with God knows what, taking a bunch of pills, and they just look bubbly and inflated. And they put a bunch of oil on each other, wear shiny trunks, and stand on stage. I had no interest in that whatsoever. I thought it was very sort of, just not very macho and manly thing to do. And then I saw Blood and Guts, and I realized, oh no, bodybuilding is actually super hardcore and really cool.
Yeah.
So that video really changed my perspective on bodybuilding. And then I started YouTube rabbit holing everyone, watching all the, the Ronnie stuff over at the gym in Texas where he was, and Branch Warren videos, Kevin Levrone stuff, all of this stuff. I just fell in love with it very, very quickly. And that was in 2000, in probably 17. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to start using the Blood and Guts training program.
Yeah.
But I had not really any idea on how to eat properly. I had a general idea, and it was like, I just batch cook a massive slow cooker full of curry and rice and just eat that 6 times a day and hope for the best. And I still wasn't interested or didn't know anything about the drug side of things. So I just enjoyed the training, went really hard on the training, put on a good amount of muscle. I got to 250 pounds naturally, a little bit soft and fluffy, but it kind of gave me the confirmation that, okay, yeah, you can just food and training, you can respond pretty well and put on a good bit of muscle. What could be the next step? And my buddy Anthony at the time, he knew everything about bodybuilding. He was a diehard fan, and he kind of said, watch this, read that. And I kind of fell into it a bit more, blah, blah, blah. A couple of years of just dabbling and training and kind of just enjoying the lifestyle a bit with work. Still no real intentions of competing. Fast forward, quick holiday over to Bali with the missus. After that, my buddy Rocco said, you've got to come over to Thailand on your way back. Just swing through. I'll introduce you to a few people, and you can, see what they have to say about you and see if you should give this whole bodybuilding thing a proper go. So I was like, well, why not? I've got nothing to lose. And so I showed up in Bangkok. And at the time, they had a bit of a camp going on with Andy Cunningham, which was Lee Priest's training partner.
Oh,
in his glory days. And he was doing a camp there with the Korean team, all the big pros from Korea, and a couple of the Thai big guys, a big guy over from Iran called Big Ali. And these were all juggernaut human beings. I was like, what the? I couldn't believe what I
yeah.
was seeing. I just shadowed these guys for like 2 weeks. I couldn't get enough of it. It was so much fun. And in that time, I was introduced to Steve, and I sort of, had a really good training session. We clicked instantly. And I had a good sit down with him, did a blood work consult and all of that sort of stuff. Told him what I've done so far, where I was going, what I wanted to get out of it, blah blah blah. I basically asked him, "Do you think it's worth a good shot?" I'm at this stage. I was, 30 years old and still, still natty. And I'm like, "Do you think it's worth a good shot?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "If you've come this far like this, doing with what you know, and you've come this far, then yeah, it's definitely worth a good shot."
Yeah.
He said, "It's not so much about your age; it's about the years of exposure to the lifestyle and the drugs and just the stresses of bodybuilding. And you're just starting, so age is just a number. If you're healthy, your blood work looks good, and all your health checks out, just rock and roll."
Cool.
And that was it. So me and Steve started working together straight away, and that was it. That's how I got into bodybuilding. But it was very, very late into my life, so I've had
Yeah.
to kind of really crash course everything in the last 5 years, but I'm obsessive over it. So I really went hard on all things bodybuilding, all the educational side of things. I just did everything and just,
Yeah.
well, built a half decent physique, I think, and built a business off the back of it. And now I'm, knocking on the door of a IFBB pro card. Got one pro card. Now it's time to get the big one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super interesting. Thank you for sharing all that. And I'm just going to share your Instagram real quick so folks can see. I feel like I'm pulling a Fuad here. But yeah, you made tremendous, Aaron, you're even bigger than this now, but this is a crazy transformation in a relatively short amount of time. And yeah, this is a more recent picture. So I wanted to ask, you mentioned, getting into it later in life. How does that affect your approach? What do you think's different about starting bodybuilding later with regards to health considerations, with regards to how you train, how you think about pushing, how you think about timelines? Or is it not that different?
For me personally, not too different. I'm
Yeah.
very mindful. I understand that, I'm not 25 years old. I'm 35 years old. But I went into it with, good foundations, and I'd
Clean
made
bill of
sure that,
health.
I'd learned, I had a very good athletic base, decent muscle memory. I was able to train hard and go hard and with fairly decent technique that, we cleared up over the years and got better and better at that. And I just kind of gauge it by the response. Well, what's my body telling me? I just have to be very honest with myself, which, you have to just sit back, take a step back, and really, really analyze things. It's very easy to ignore the little things, right? And just, that's no big deal. Just push through it. I just be very honest with myself, and I'm mindful of these things. And and that's pretty much it, really. I do understand at some point I'm probably gonna, age does become a factor, and when it does, I'm very well prepared for that when it comes to how I'm going to have to adjust my training and my input and how hard I can push in certain areas. But I think with the right adjustments, you can still continue to progress really, really well. And we've seen it a whole bunch of times, right? But it's a case of being smart with those decisions, like not trying to push like you're a fresh 20-year-old when you're pushing 40. It's just not smart. And you don't need to do that to grow.
Yeah.
So I'm really thankful that there is so much great content out there and education out there when it comes to, especially the training side, how to still continue to grow without absolutely kicking your own ass day in, day out. We still kick our own asses in the gym, but you know what I mean, as far as programming, specifically programming and how we build different training blocks and cycles, I think you can last a lot longer and stay a lot healthier. And thankfully, touch wood, so far so good, healthy as a horse and still growing, and I think it's just a case of being mindful, keep on top of your health. Don't ignore anything. Just address it. Have peace of mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've got some great people in your corner too, so I'm sure they can help you
Absolutely. I have
out
a
with
lot
that.
of people I can ask and fall back on. And if I'm not sure about something, yeah, lucky for me, I do, Steve's round the corner, we're still, best of mates, and we meet up often and have our little bro chats and stuff over a nice cigar, and we still talk and do a Muscle Nomads episode every now and then.
Nice.
I'm recently partnered up as well with Jared from the RP Strength crew.
Yeah.
World of knowledge with that guy. He's leveled up my training again. Every time I meet someone new, there's always something to learn as well. I like to sit back, ask some questions, see what you can pick up. There's always something to pick up. And that guy, a world of knowledge when it comes to training. So I had a really good experience recently hanging out with him. So that's given me a whole nother big boost, which is producing great results right now as far as the programming is concerned. And and all of this stuff I can just kind of take on board and pass it on to clients and friends as well. So it's
Yeah.
really cool. It's a good community,
Yeah.
a good circle of people, small
Yeah,
circle, but
well,
a
I
good
think
circle.
you attract that also with your humility and your open-mindedness and your willingness to learn too. Like I think so many people shoot themselves in the foot by not being willing to learn from everyone.
Yeah,
And I think
can't
that
be
can go a
stubborn.
long way.
Absolutely. I think like I post it quite often. Like, don't camp mentality. Camp mentality will ruin you. That will ruin your progress.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of camps or cults, whatever you want to call them, out there in the bodybuilding world right now. It's this way or the highway. This way, nothing else works. And it's the
Yeah.
most nonsensical nonsense you're ever going to come across. And it just limits you. It just limits you. It saps the fun out of bodybuilding. The fun part of bodybuilding is learning all of these different ways that could potentially work better for you. And if you don't try, you don't know. It's all
Yeah.
well and good listening to someone that has good knowledge and a good base and they have their way of doing it. Okay. But there are so many options. And the way I see bodybuilding is everything works if you do it
Yes.
good enough.
Yeah.
And look, we've seen it. We've seen it in the industry. At some point, you've got
Yeah.
to get your head out the book. You've got to stop citing studies and just look around you. Look around, have a look at the industry as a whole. Look at all the people, network, talk to people. And you'll soon see that most people are doing completely different stuff at different times in different ways. And they're all growing and looking great.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do
Well,
think, open-mindedness is not only key to keep progressing, because if you're not learning, you're not growing. You should always be trying to learn something new, right? And it also, it's fun. Bodybuilding should be fun. We should be learning all this cool new stuff. Although there's so much new stuff every year. How can we just say, nah, that's nonsense this way? I don't get it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I'd love to hear, you mentioned Jared has really upgraded your training, and I've been watching your training videos with him, and I just watched your Rumble Q&A mini interview with him, which I thought was excellent. I actually was coached by Steve Hall for a year, if you know him, and coached by Jared for a bit too. And I followed that style of training for a long time. I've moved away from it since, but got a lot of benefit from it. I'm curious, what have been some of your biggest takeaways, and how has it transformed your training?
Well, definitely, Jared definitely reinforced that mindfulness of being open-minded. A lot of people can put those guys like Mike and Jared, they'll put them in a camp. Oh, they're the reps and reserve guys. They're the mesocycle guys.
Yeah.
They're anything but. Those guys, they're the most open-minded. Like, they will listen and take everything on board and put it into practice and see what hits. They're very clever. They're not dumb guys that are just starting a cult. And and he reinforced that. So we have really good conversations when we're training. And he's like, some people say, oh, so only the lengthened is important. And he's like, come on. Everything is important. Everything works. And some really good pointers I took away from Jared is, one, leveling up that higher level of execution, really, really being just absolutely dialed into the execution. Rep execution is everything. And I always think my form is pretty good and my technique is good, but everyone's got a little room to, get better. And it might just be a little tweak or a cue that you haven't thought of before that could be the changer. And he introduced me to a lot of those little things. It was a lot of confirmation of like things that I had been, weren't far off of what a lot of the top guys are doing that he's trained with and is training. So that's quite a nice thing. Even though we're confident in what we do, we're building muscle, the evidence is there that we're doing something right. But it is nice to have very high level confirmation every now and then. It's cool.
Sure.
And then he obviously introduced me to the app, the RP app. So I'd heard of it, and I know a bunch of people that have used it. I've had a bunch of clients come to me saying I currently use this app, blah blah blah. And I thought, well, there's quite a lot of people using this thing. I wonder what it's all about. And he explained it to me, explained how those guys built the algorithm. And I was like, actually, it sounds really, really damn good, because I already have an app that we build, for coaches through the Kahunas. And, that has, we can build our own templates and our training and plans within that. But their algorithm on how it asks you questions and then regulates the mesocycle day by day based on your previous performance is next level good. It's really, really good, because it's basically doing all the things that we would do for ourselves in our programming, but it's doing them a lot faster and in real time. So like typically, what would you say? You would probably update maybe your volume or your frequency or something. Like I would probably take a look at that and maybe make some adjustments when I really notice some of my check-ins, like some data where I'm like, I should probably alter my training a bit, by which time it's maybe a little bit too late, or it would have been great if I'd made that change 2 or 3 weeks earlier.
Right.
And that's what their app, their algorithm, well, no human can respond and react the way that algorithm can. So, and it's built by those guys who are both, very, very educated bodybuilder, exercise science guys. So it has that, it's a nice bit of confirmation that it's not just some guy who's built a cool app with a funny algorithm. This is built by dudes who want to achieve the same things that we all want to achieve, which is a massive jacked physique that looks really good. And so, I had a really good look into it, tried out one of their templates based on what I was trying to achieve at the time, filled in the exercise selection based on what I had available, and ran through it for a couple of weeks. Then Jared came back, so we ran through it again with him, and it's just been great. I feel amazing. I'm growing well. I look really good, and so it's just nice to have that extra new little thing in there, a bit of excitement to think about. And I love training. I'm a diehard. Training is the part of bodybuilding which really gets me going. And if there's something new to try or learn, or I'm all for it. And this was a really good experience. So he is good. Jared taught me a whole bunch of stuff, and he's just a really good guy. Do you know what I mean? He's one of those just real dudes. He's just one of the good ones. So I enjoy chatting to him and spending some time with him. It's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, completely agree with what you said. I think the app is awesome. It's extremely innovative. There's nothing like it. And Jared is a great person, and I've had the chance to meet and train with Dr. Mike as well. And he's such a genuine, humble, smart, gracious, caring guy too. It's really cool.
I think that's why they're doing so well. They deserve it. They're just good dudes.
Yeah.
They're not trying to con anyone. They're not trying to scam anyone with, some snake oil or clickbait crap. No, what they've built is genuinely very, very impressive. It's very cool.
Yeah. Has it been a learning curve for you? Obviously, as Jared says, everyone trains with reps and reserves, whether they know it or not. But purposely trying to modulate your reps and reserve, has that been challenging at first, or how have you found that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, of course. I'm one of those guys who's like, take it to the death -1, right? And I love training hard. And sometimes the challenging part is when, for instance, when you're starting out a new mesocycle or something, and you're starting with a few reps in reserve, having to really think about being accurate with that so the algorithm can do its thing accurately.
Yeah.
It just kind of held me accountable a little bit. And it just made me sort of sit back and just say, do you know what? Trust the process and see how it goes. And, but of course, challenging for sure. Leaving a couple of reps in the tank, no one likes doing that. But if it serves a purpose and it looks good and feels good and it carries me, it gives me a bit more of a runway as far as my progression in this training cycle, then absolutely. And it makes sense. And, so that's definitely been something I've been more mindful of. Like I program it with clients, especially clients at different levels, at different ages, beginners coming into training, guys that are going through different training cycles, in preps when, people are just getting close to the end of prep and you've got to start leveraging reps in reserve or, modulating volume and things. Mm. It's just made me a bit more mindful about all of those things with myself, because I often overlook what I'm doing myself. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
we'll just keep rocking as normal. But so yeah, it's that's been really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's definitely affected the way I program as well. It's only going to be a benefit for everyone around me and people who I work with. It's really good info to input on other people as well.
Yeah. It's, I think runway is a great word for it. It's kind of like, you're starting your off season. You don't want to jump to super high food right away. You want to progress up to it. So you can make use of every step. I think that's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure.
What is your approach? You talked about the goal of earning your pro card this year. What's the timeline for that? And, or if not this year, next year, and talk about kind of the journey to trying for a pro card and what you've learned, what you would do differently. How do you think about that?
I mean, the goal remains. I think that it's just a reality check at some point. I mean, last year I was a point away, 1 point. I was 8 weeks into a prep and there was a pro qualifier locally. So I jumped into it, won super heavies and lost in the overall to an absolutely great heavyweight and a fantastic bodybuilder. And yeah, rightfully so. He definitely outsized me in a few departments. And so that was pretty much it. I mean, the reality check from I remember starting bodybuilding and doing my first show. And I think probably realistically everyone has that in the back of their head, like, oh, it's my first show. I'm going to show up. I'm going to look amazing and I'm going to crush it and get my pro card on day one. And we all have those little fantasy pipe dreams, right? And then, first show I came first from last. And I was like, okay, that's the reality check. This is what you got to do. This is how long it's going to take. And so the goal has kind of always been there. Be patient, keep chipping away, keep adding on the pounds, just keep making progress. Be mindful of realistic about the time it's going to take. I understand in 5 years, I've done a lot in 5 years. But yeah, the reality is to be a competitive level pro, it's still a good couple of years of room there to really make sure I stand out on stage and do well. And as far as the journey to get there, I mean, it depends on what kind of topics. I mean, it's a little bit different with each of the topics. I think with training and the progress of training is just a forever evolving thing. And as long as you're growing and it's working and you're feeling good, then great, you're doing something right. Keep enjoying it, keep pushing. I think one of the biggest factors, which is controversial, I'd say a lot of people would say, oh, the drugs don't really matter, if you're at pro level or not. I would probably disagree. I think especially for the super heavyweight open bodybuilders in that category, when you're on stage 250 lean, it's a little bit of a different ball game. And I think the reality is now I'm on year 5. It's got to that point where I think you can dabble with minimal effective dosages and things like that for a few years, and you can try this and you can try that and just see what hits, see what makes you feel good, see what produces results. And I kind of feel like I had this conversation with a few of the boys the other day. I kind of feel like it gets to a point where have you got to take, I don't know if you have or not, I'm just gonna have to try and see, but is there a step? Is there that step like, okay, good amateur to legit pro card winner can step on a pro stage? Is there a step up that you have to take in everything, drugs included? And I think that's probably something I have to dabble with a little bit just to see.
Yeah.
And I think especially for the bigger guys, heavier guys, I mean, we're seeing a good few examples of that right now. I mean, like Paul Barnett, right? What he's doing right now, I think he's in his prep, growing in his prep. And, he's a sensible guy, but he's dabbling with some pretty reasonable dosages to get the job done. And I do think, was he 268 right now or something like that?
Yeah.
That's a freaky weight.
Yeah.
That's not, and I think people tend to forget, or we tend to forget, when you get to these kinds of sizes, like you're not anywhere near normal anymore. You're so far away from normal that everything you do in your life is going to be extreme. Bodybuilding at this level is extreme. You're going to have to do some extreme stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's Mike, actually, Dr. Mike Israetel said this. He said he would much rather someone go hard on that stuff to build the muscle in the first few years and then start tapering off for the purpose of maintenance and longevity later on. So you don't, you're not just running everything crazy high and battering yourself for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So I think the bit I've been trying to figure out is where's that sweet spot, and how far past that sweet spot have you got to push to get to a certain level, given that everything else is in place. Food has got to be absolutely on point. Training's got to be on point. I'm very fortunate that I get to do this pretty much full time outside of my coaching, so I can really live the full time bodybuilder life and get that dialed in. So then it's like, well, what else is missing here? What can I dabble with? And I'm a big guy about experimenting. I'm all for experimenting. If you don't try, you don't know. As long as you experiment in a safe, controlled manner, then go for it. And so I'm kind of at that crossroads now. Like, I'm thinking about competing November, end of the year, trying to get a pro card again. And I'm a lot bigger than I was last year. So I'm happy with the gains that have been made. And I think it's enough tissue to stand out and get the job done. Being one of the taller guys, and I have to be, I'm gonna have to be a pretty damn tight 250 on stage at the least. I think the end goal is probably a good 270 towards 280 on stage at 6 foot. I think is realistic.
Wow.
I'm like 5'11 and a half. I think I count as 5'11. Depends how much growth hormone I'm taking, how swollen my feet are.
Huge.
But so there's all of these things now when I'm creeping up to that kind of like, well, you're almost a pro. Are you going to have to start doing some real pro level stuff?
Yeah.
And it's that crossroads now. So it's, I guess part of the process. I love it either way. But I also really, really want that pro card. So it's like, do whatever it takes to get the job done. And that's a big step. It's a big commitment.
Yeah. I'm sure you'll get there. I have not been in the sport very long, and I'm not a coach, so take anything I say with a grain of salt. But I do think you have to get to those higher doses unless you're a complete genetic anomaly.
Absolutely.
Like I think, I don't think like a gram of gear is going to cut it for a 250 plus pound bodybuilder. There's this really great thread on Professional Muscle, actually, of this guy Lukey. He coaches a ton of pros in Poland, and he knows all the pros in Europe. And he's very forthcoming about what they take and how they build their cycles and things like that. And it's definitely not, it's not, 300 tests and 800 Masteron or whatever. I do think at a certain level, it does require a step up. It's progressive, like everything. But yeah,
it is. I don't think that's just part of it. And, it might sound scary. It might sound like a lot, but if you're walking around at like 270 with abs in pretty damn good shape, and your health is all on point, and you're responding well, and and you're not doing unnecessary compounds, then, I think that you can manage it the same as anything else.
Yeah.
You just got to be clever with it. You got to be smart and just don't be an idiot. But yeah, the reality is now I'm at that point where I'm like, okay, well, I've dabbled, a couple of years, I got away with less than a gram and made great gains. And then the couple of years after that, sort of gram and a half, was getting the job done. And then up to the sort of 2 to 2.5 in the last 12 months is kind of what I've been dabbling with in and out of cycles. I've run a few shorter cycles at much lower dosages to kind of test that theory as well. And then right now, sort of, I'm at that bit. I'm just kind of deciding what I'm going to do. But yeah, the reality is, I think at this stage, You got to kind of commit, and it's realistically based on what I know, the people I've spoken to in the industry at the higher level. You know, anywhere between 3 and 5 grams is not uncommon at that higher level.
Yeah.
For periods of time. You know, we're not
Yeah.
running that all year stuff. You know, this could be an
Yeah, and I think, you know, with Steve in your corner emphasizing the blood work, the ancillaries, the organ testing, like you said, there bodybuilding isn't healthy, but there is a way to mitigate risk and a way to be pretty relatively safe about it. If you're keeping on top of all of that stuff.
For sure. Yeah, it's good to have someone like Steve in my corner, because if there's anything where I'm like, maybe this, maybe that, you know, it's a quick phone call away, and he's usually got an answer for most things.
Yeah.
You know, there's not much that he hasn't seen at this stage.
Yeah.
And I also recently as well had some really great conversations and talk with Taeian Clark as well.
Oh, cool.
And another mind of unbelievable wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really cool guy. Very some different, you know, takes on things. So it gives me, again, I'm so curious, and my open-mindedness might get the better of me sometimes, but I just love hearing, you know, different ways of doing things. You know, I'll ask Steve something and he'll be like, this supplement at this dose, and this dose for this long, for that long, job done. And it is, he's seen it so many times, and he's fixed so many people and done so much stuff like that. He's good. And then I'll ask, so like I could ask Taeian the same question, and he will have some protocol with natural foods and this oil and this, that, and the other stuff most people have never heard before. He's just the opposite end of like, oh, he really gives you another perspective and a different way of thinking about things. It's a really interesting guy to talk to. And then I have, you know, I can drop Jared a message, and there's a guy who's directly working with, you know, a lot of the top tier pros. So he's seeing what's happening in the real world at this level. So it's nice. I have a good few people there I can kind of fall back on, and there's a good few bunch of people here. Our small circle of guys here are all very knowledgeable. I think you had Nick on recently as well. The Australian bodybuilder that was here. He's around for a couple of months. Yeah, good guy, really good guy. And so there's some good people here, and we all bounce ideas off of each other. We're all in our little WhatsApp groups, throwing ideas around and things like that. So it's cool. We're not just blindly, you know, closing our eyes and throwing stuff into the dark and seeing what hits. It's all pretty well thought out.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you've experimented so much, obviously everything's individual response, but what have been some of your favorite compounds for off season or for prep that you've come across personally, including some of the wacky stuff like Increlex and things like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always, the Test Primo combo is a nice fallback at any point. I feel great on it. I respond very well. But, you know, curiosity as it is, I like to dabble a little bit. So that's always a good thing I've fallen back on since I started bodybuilding, and it's always worked very well for me. I recently started running some shorter cycles, like 6 to 8 week cycles on the Taeian Clark models, based on his ideas of androgen receptor downregulation and kind of cycling around that activity.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense to me. I'm a fan. I am a believer that is a thing, whether or not people can read the right studies for it and what they're seeing. But I do think there is something there. We see a lot of people in bodybuilding where I find I'll see them hit a body weight, and then months will go by and they're not making any more gains, but they're pushing the gear, they're pushing the food, and they're pushing everything, but the body weight is staying the same. And they're not looking any better. They're just accumulating more and more side effects, or looking slightly worse and worse, or slightly fatter and fatter. And to me, that's a big sign to say, probably time to, you know, have a little break or a reset or something, whether it's just come back down to a cruise, whether it's have a mini diet, whatever it is, something. You can't just keep push and hopefully something hits, because these guys are pushing for months, scaling up the dose, scaling up the food, and they might, if they're lucky, get another half a pound to a pound in that time.
Yeah.
You know, they've made the gains. You've already made the gains. It's stopped. At some point, you just have to accept that You can't just keep continually making gains, no matter how much drugs you keep throwing at it.
Yeah.
Up to the level of drugs that I've personally experienced. Now, is that different when you're talking about the 3 grams plus crowd? Maybe. I have no experience there. I can't say. But certainly I think it was really interesting to me. It sparked my interest. And like always, you can sit here and this study, this one and that. You can do that all day long. At some point, you've just got to say, try it and see.
Yeah, try it.
If you don't try, you never know. So that's what I did. I just tried it. And I know that I respond well to testosterone. So I had no need whatsoever to do a nandrolone base, a nandrolone solo cycle. But I just kind of wanted to see what it felt like. Because everyone's like, you can't run a nandrolone solo cycle, this, that, and the other. You won't produce estradiol, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, right.
And Taeian's like, just listen to this, do that, and see what hits. Food is king, by the way, in this whole scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the food's not there, you ain't growing. Doesn't matter what you do. So that was the big premise there. I'd pushed food as high as I'd ever pushed food, but it went in really, really well. And because I only had to focus on pushing hard for 6 weeks, it was a little less daunting than 20 weeks of eating this much food is going to destroy me. 6 weeks, it's manageable. I have that kind of end goal that I'm working towards. It was just mentally a little bit easy to digest. Yeah. And so we pushed food high. My response was very good. And I was only running 400 milligrams of MPP.
Wow.
And which is like, it's nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the entry level dose. If you're going to shut yourself down, make sure it's enough to make it worthwhile, which for most people is around about 400 megs to start with. And so, yeah, I did that. And surprise, surprise, I started just growing really, really fast.
Cool.
And I started that at about 275, I think I was when I started that push. And so I was already pretty big and in fairly decent condition. Not as good condition as I am right now at that weight, but pretty good. And I hit 300 pounds in about 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And I was like, and I thought, is this just going to be a lot? Obviously, there's a lot of water there,
Sure.
But a lot of it was intracellular. I wasn't really struggling with, subcutaneous puffiness and water and bloating. I felt great. And I looked pretty bloody good at 300 pounds. And I was very comfortable moving around just fine. No issues at all. Blood pressure was great. Blood's checked out. I was like, wow, this is really good. And it kind of it wasn't so much the dose and the input. Towards the end of that 6 weeks, I threw in 100 megs of test prop on the back, just so we could, the purpose of this was to feel what's the real difference between nandrolone and testosterone about how it makes you feel and perform. That's what I wanted to know. If I know it myself, I can then teach it to others having that personal experience. Nandrolone it makes you some people just feel great on it. I've got clients that run nandrolone as a base and they feel great because they just don't get on with test whatsoever. They have far too many side effects. And the nandrolone is a great option for those people.
Yeah.
But for me, the nandrolone, it makes you feel like ultra stoic.
Yeah.
You're just you're just kind of numb to the world and everything around you. You're just like, yeah. You never feel like, you don't get that, I don't know, maybe it's a cognitive upregulation of something or other like that.
Yeah.
That boost. You don't, that same boost you get from test. You don't get that with nandrolone, but the results were there and it did work. So that was a fun little experiment. And then I like the ideas of the short cycles and the responses there. I took a few weeks off, let things clear out a little bit, run everything with short esters. So there's less time to clear out in between. Do a little diet break, cut off a little bit of fluff, see what's left over, cut back down to sort of 280. Looked pretty damn good, back down to similar condition than when I was started, but heavier. So muscle was gained, no problem there. Did it again, but this time did it with test as a base because I just respond very well to test. A little bit of Mastron alongside that, a little bit of Primo, switch in and out just to see what hits, what feels good. A lot of little experiments like that in a short cycle scenario. And then again, back into the long cycle scenario, depending on the situation and what I'm able to do at the time. This really only applies for growing phases. I think in a prep, I wouldn't do short cycles with someone in a prep. I don't want the fluctuations. I want it to be very manageable. And the length of time that a short cycle might be for one individual to another, I think, is very individual as well. I have people that run short cycles and they keep growing, to a certain point where then we might, have a mini cut or a break or something, or a cruise. And then I have guys that run short cycles and they prefer that and they grow absolutely amazing. So again, most of this stuff comes down to, sure, we can cite the studies all day long. We can compare this to that. This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. Blah, blah, blah. We can argue all day long. It comes down to individual needs analysis only.
Yeah.
That is the only thing that matters. And if you don't try some of these alternative routes, you never know. So for me, it just gave me a whole nother bunch of tools in the toolbox to use, which is nothing but a good thing, right? And it was interesting and fun. So that's probably the most against the grain thing I've done, is the Nandrolone solo short cycle push. You mentioned the Increlex. That was a fun little ride there as well.
Yeah.
I felt like Increlex, realistically, not very sustainable, too expensive, too hard to get hold of to really run it for long periods of time.
Yeah.
Did it cause any major growth? I'd say a little bit. I kind of didn't gain a substantial amount of weight, but I stayed pretty damn lean. Maybe got a little bit leaner. So I would say it's an amazing recomp drug. I think it would probably shine more so in a prep. Same as growth hormone. I'm not convinced growth hormone is a massive growing agent. I think it facilitates the environment in which muscles grow. Good sleep, good recovery, healthy joints, all of this stuff. This is what makes muscles grow. Plus obviously your anabolic androgenic input. But as far as does growth hormone significantly increase the rate of growth, I don't think so. But I do think I don't know really how to get around it or explain the mechanisms, but when I see people dieting or going through a bit of a recomp where weight kind of stays the same, or they get leaner and they just continuously look better or even sometimes grow in a prep, I think growth hormone shines in those situations. So I did the whole Chase Irons experiment. I did, you know what? Again, if you don't try, you never know. So I said, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money, break the bank for a little while, and I'm going to work my way up to a 20 units every day experiment. And I did that. And honestly, I don't think it was worth it at all. I don't think there was really any difference between, say, 8 to 10 units and 20 units, apart from my bank account really didn't like me very much. But then that was while I was trying to grow. So yes, it kept me a little bit lean. I think it keeps the fat off a little more effectively, for sure. Recovered well, slept very good, which can sometimes be very challenging in a heavy growth push with lots of food. Lots of people struggle with those areas. So I think growth can help there. But again, I see it shine way more when you move in the opposite direction, when you're trying to lean up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that experiment was fun. Probably not worth it. I don't think there's really any place for over 10 units, in my opinion, from what I've experienced and what I've seen. And it has its place. But the same with the Increlex. I think it's a very similar kind of thing, probably a bit more powerful as far as the IGF-1, response in certain times around training. Did it increase my pumps massively, like injecting locally? Not really, no more than growth hormone does.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's some websites that I don't think I'm allowed to mention that sell some little injectable pre-workouts that I've tried, which have produced way better results as far as like the feel, the pump for the pre-workout energy, injectable ATP and things like that.
Interesting.
They work way better as a pre-workout. But the Increlex, I think, in over the space of time I was using it, I think I did pick up a little bit of tissue and I stayed a lot leaner than I probably would have, which was nice.
Okay.
Was it affordable and sustainable? Probably not.
Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I find the experiments so fascinating, and to hear someone at your level experimenting with the Taeian Clark model is also really cool, because I don't think I've heard that. I'm sure there are guys who do it, but I just haven't heard of it. So that's really interesting.
He'd be a great guy to get on and have a chat with.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to him. I think I listen to everything he puts out. He's great.
Really interesting dude. And a very nice guy, really good,
Yeah.
Humble, down to earth guy. Yeah, he's cool.
Definitely. Cool. Well, Aaron, I could definitely go for a full another hour, but unfortunately,
just talking about gear and bodybuilding and stuff.
I'd love to get you on for a part 2 to talk about like nutrition and some other topics. But this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can folks find you, reach out to you, and I'll have links to everything in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So unfortunately, recently my YouTube channel got banned for talking about certain substances, although everyone talks about them. My account got red flagged, got banned. I don't know enough people to get the channel back. So that's that one, unfortunately. So all the old Muscle Nomads episodes are all still available on Steve's channel. Okay. But I will set up a backup YouTube channel, which I have done already, Bodybuilding with Aaron 2.0. Cool. And I'm also on Rumble as well. The channel is called The Muscle Nomads on Rumble. Still haven't really uploaded too much on there. I've got a whole hard drive full of everything that I need to kind of re-upload and do some fresh stuff. So that's all coming soon, just very, very busy. And Instagram is probably the best to reach out. You know, I do a lot of sort of Q&As and stuff on there and just general chit chat with people all the time. Yeah. Bodybuilding with Aaron, just type that in, you'll find me somewhere.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
No problem, mate. Good talking to you. See you soon.
You too. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find The Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.